Hi everyone, this is Ruchi Kulkarni and I am bringing you the chapter A House is Not a Home from Class 9 book Moments. The story highlights the thin difference between what's a house and what's a home. While a house is a building where people live, a house becomes a home only when a family lives there, together sharing the unique bond of love and oneness. As a teenager, the narrator went through a bad phase of life. And as is true, difficult times help a person grow. The narrator's house gets destroyed by fire, but after that, he gets a new house, new friends, and a new perspective on life. And then he realizes that his home is the one built by love and affection of his family and loved ones. So today we'll read and understand this chapter. Thereafter, we'll talk about the significance of the title, the moral, summary, and question answers at the end. Now, without much ado, let's begin with today's session with some important aspects about the author Zan Godioso. Zan Godioso is an author based in California. She has contributed stories to and edited the famous Chicken Soup for the Soul Book series. These books consist of short stories that seek to comfort and inspire the readers. Among these, her most notable contributions have been for the book Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul Part 3. Zan has also co-authored The Buddha Next Door, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Stories. Zan is currently working on a documentary called Happiness, while also writing a weekly blog on the same subject. She is exploring what constitutes happiness in a time of change. This story reflects the challenges of being a teenager and the problems of growing up. How does the author overcome his problems? Let's read the story. My first year of high school felt awkward. High school means classes 11th and 12th. Awkward means uncomfortable. After leaving junior high at the head of my class with all the seniority, junior high are classes 9th and 10th. The upper grade levels could afford me. It felt strange starting over as a freshman. Freshman is a student who is new in the school. The school was twice as big as my old school, and to make matters worse, my closest friends were sent to a different high school. I felt very isolated. Isolated means lonely. I missed my old teachers so much that I would go back and visit them. They would encourage me to get involved in school activities so that I could meet new people. They told me that in time I would adjust and probably end up loving my new school more than I had my old one. They made me promise that when that happened, I still would come by and visit them from time to time. I understood the psychology in what they were saying, but I took some comfort in it nonetheless. In the first paragraph of the story, we come to know that the narrator has gone to high school, means he has just gone to class 11th. But there he felt a little uncomfortable because when he was in his junior high, that is in class 9th or 10th, he was the head of his class. And being a senior, he had all the benefits which he carried and all his responsibilities which he carried very nicely. But now, here, when he has come to a new school and in class 11th, he felt as if he was a freshman, that is, a new child in the school. He didn't know what to do, and so he was very uncomfortable. This new school was two times bigger than his old school, and all his other friends, his closest friends, were sent to different high schools. So, in this new school, the narrator did not have any friends. Everything was new to him, the school building was new to him. No one had known him, and therefore he felt very lonely. He missed his old teachers. He wanted to go back, and he would go back to his old school and visit them time and again. His old teachers used to encourage him to get involved in the school activities so that he won't feel bored and he will be able to make new friends. And then they also told him that once he is adjusted in the new school and he starts liking his new school, then he should also come and visit the old school too. The teachers only wanted the narrator to get adjusted in the new environment rather than feeling sad and depressed about his lost friends. The narrator understood the intentions of his teachers, and so that made him somewhat comfortable in that idea. One Sunday afternoon, not long after I had started high school, I was sitting at home at our dining table doing homework. It was a cold and windy fall day, and we had a fire going in our fireplace. As usual, my red tabby cat was lying on top of my papers, purring loudly and occasionally swatting at my pen for entertainment's sake. Tabby cat is a grey or brownish cat with dark stripes, and purring is a cat's sound. Swatting means hitting. She was never far from me. I had rescued her when she was a kitten. Rescued means saved. And somehow she knew that I was the one responsible for giving her the good life. My mother kept stoking the fire to keep the house nice and warm. Stoking means add fuel to. Suddenly, I smelled something strange, and then I noticed it. Smoke pouring in through the seams of the ceiling. Seams means joints of the ceiling. The smoke began to fill the room so quickly that we could barely see. Groping our way to the front door. Groping means feeling with the hands. We all ran out into the front yard. By the time we made our way outside, the whole roof was engulfed in flames. Engulfed means covered. And it was spreading quickly. I ran to the neighbors to call the fire department while I watched my mother run back into the house. As the narrator was getting adjusted to the new environment of his school, he faced a very big crisis one day. One Sunday afternoon, when he was doing his homework, it was a cold and a windy day, and his mother was adding fuel to the fireplace. He had a red tabby cat. Tabby is a brownish or grey colored cat which has stripes on the body, and this cat was his favorite pet cat. The cat was lying on his papers, and as the narrator was writing his homework and he was moving his pen, the cat was trying to play with that pen. This was the cat which the narrator had rescued when she was only a kitten. And somehow the cat also understood that the narrator had given her a very good life. At the same time, narrator's mother was adding fuel to the fire, and just then he smelled something like a smoke, and he saw that the entire house was filled with smoke. The smoke was going through the joints of the ceiling up in the air. He could barely see anything. So he got up, and by feeling through his hands, he went to the front door. Just when they all came outside the house, they saw their house burned into the fire. They saw that the whole roof was surrounded in flames and the fire was spreading quickly. The narrator ran to the neighbor's house to call the fire department, and on the other hand, his mother ran inside the same house to get something from there. Let's read ahead now. My mother then ran out of the house carrying a small metal box full of important documents. She dropped the case on the lawn and, in a crazed state, crazed means crazy like, ran back into the house. I knew what she was after. My father had died when I was young, and I was certain that she was not going to let his pictures and letters go up in flames. They were the only things that she had to remember him by. Still, I screamed at her, "Mom, no!" I was about to run after her when I felt a large hand hold me back. It was a fireman. I hadn't even noticed that the street had already filled with fire trucks. I was trying to free myself from his grasp. Grasp means grip. Yelling, "You don't understand, my mother's in there." He held on to me while other firefighters ran into the house. He knew that I wasn't acting very logically and that if he were to let go, I would run. He was right. "It's all right. They will get her," he said. He wrapped a blanket around me and sat me down in our car. Soon after that, a fireman emerged from our house with my mom in tow. Tow means carrying her. He quickly took her over to the truck and put an oxygen mask on her. I ran over and hugged her. All those times I ever argued with her and hated her vanished at the thought of losing her. Vanished means disappeared. We read in the last paragraph that the mother had gone inside the house when the house had caught fire. And then suddenly she came out carrying a small metal box which was full of some important documents. She dropped that metal box on the lawn in the garden, and then, in a crazy like state, she ran back into the house. The narrator knew that the mom went inside the house again because she wanted to get some photographs and letters of narrator's fathers because she had those only things of memory of her husband. The narrator became worried when he saw his mother going inside the second time. But he wanted and to he go also inside wanted to run after his mother to save burning her. House. Just then, someone caught him. One of the firemen that it was a went fireman. Inside and took her outside, wrapped in a blanket. When she came outside, she wasn't conscious, so she was given an oxygen mask, and they all sat in their car. The narrator got so worried that he ran over to his mother and he hugged her. And he remembered that all those times when he had argued with his mother, he had fought with his mother, he had never listened to her, hated her, all those negative thoughts about her had suddenly disappeared just at one thought of losing her. When he realized that he might lose his mother to death at that time, he felt that he had a change of heart. "She is going to be okay," said the fireman. "She just inhaled a little smoke." And then he ran back to fight the fire while my mother and I sat there dazed. Dazed means confused. I remember watching my house burn down and thinking that there was nothing I could do about it. 5 hours later, the fire was finally out. Our house was almost completely burned down. But then it struck me I hadn't seen my cat. Where was my cat? Much to my horror, I realized that she was nowhere to be found. Then all at once it hit me: the new school, the fire, my cat. I broke down in tears and cried and cried. I was suffering loss big time. The firemen wouldn't let us go back into the house that night. It was still too dangerous. Dead or alive, I couldn't imagine leaving without knowing about my cat. Regardless, I had to go. We piled into the car with just the clothes on our backs and a few of the firemen's blankets and made our way to my grandparents' house to spend the night. After the narrator's mother was rescued, the fireman told him that she will be okay in some time. She is just little dazed because she had inhaled a little bit of smoke. And then both of them, the narrator and his mother, sat there seeing what had happened to their house. It took 5 hours to completely extinguish or put out that fire. And after it was put out, they could see their house had completely burned down. The narrator got very depressed, but there was something missing there, and it was his cat, his favorite pet cat. The cat couldn't be found anywhere, and he did not want to leave that place without finding the cat. But he had no option. Both of them had to leave. Now, with them, they had only some important documents, last few letters of his father, some photographs, and that's all. They had no clothes, no other things, no shoes, nothing with them. Whatever clothes they were wearing on their backs, that was it, and they were wrapped in blankets. And so they sat in their car and they went to their grandparents' house to spend that night. All these disturbing things, the new school, the fire, the loss of his cat, everything really made the narrator very sad. He broke down in tears and he really cried hard. He had suffered a big loss, the loss of his house and the loss of his cat. Now let's read ahead. The next day, Monday, I went to school. When the fire broke out, I was still wearing the dress I had worn to church that morning, but I had no shoes. I had kicked them off when I was doing my homework. They became yet another casualty of the fire. Became yet another casualty of the fire means the shoes had also got burnt in the fire. So I had to borrow some tennis shoes from my aunt. Why couldn't I just stay home from school? My mother wouldn't hear of it, but I was totally embarrassed by everything. The clothes I was wearing looked weird. I had no books or homework, and my backpack was gone. I had my life in that backpack. Backpack is the bag which students carry on their backs. The more I tried to fit in, the worse it got. Was I destined to be an outcast and a geek all my life? Outcast means rejected by the society, and geek is an unfashionable person. That's what it felt like. I didn't want to grow up, change, or have to handle life if it was going to be this way. I just wanted to curl up and die. I walked around school like a zombie. A zombie is a person who appears unresponsive to surroundings. Everything felt surreal. Surreal means unreal. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. All the security I had known from my old school, my friends, my house, and my cat had all been ripped away. Ripped away means taken away. After that depressing, sad incident, the next day was a Monday, and he went to school. When the fire had broke out in the house, he was still wearing the dress that he had worn to church that morning, but he had no shoes. His shoes had got burned in that fire. So he had to borrow some shoes from his aunt. He did not want to go to school, but the mother didn't listen. He felt really embarrassed of everything. The clothes that he were wearing were not fitting him properly. He had no books, he had no homework, and his bag had also got burnt in that fire. The narrator was trying hard to adjust with his new life, but as he was trying harder, the life was getting worse. He felt like he was destined to be outcast, to be rejected by others, to be laughed by at others. But, and that's what the life felt like to him at that point of time. He did not want to grow up. He was a teenager, but he did not want to take up those challenges where there was change, where he had to handle life's problems, and it was going to be that way. He just wanted to lie down somewhere and die because he was so sad and depressed. He walked in the school like a zombie. A zombie is a person who appears unresponsive to surroundings. He was not responding to who was talking to him, what was going around him, and everything to him felt very unreal. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next because all his comforts or the security that he had in life, that is, his old school, his old friends, his house, and his pet cat, everything had been taken away from him. His life really felt very lonely and depressing. When I walked through what used to be my house after school that day, I was shocked to see how much damage there was. Whatever hadn't burned was destroyed by the water and chemicals they had used to put out the fire. The only material things not destroyed were the photo albums, documents, and some other personal items that my mother had managed to heroically rescue. Rescue means save. But my cat was gone, and my heart ached for her. Ached means pained. There was no time to grieve. My mother rushed me out of the house. We would have to find a place to live, and I would have to go buy some clothes for school. We had to borrow money from my grandparents because there were no credit cards, cash, or even any identification to be able to withdraw money from the bank. Everything had gone up in smoke. That week, the rubble that used to be our house was being cleared off the lot. Even though we had rented an apartment nearby, I would go over to watch them clear away debris, hoping that my cat was somewhere to be found. Debris means waste. She was gone. I kept thinking about her as that vulnerable little kitten. Vulnerable means someone who is in danger. In the early morning, when I would disturb her and get out of bed, she would tag along after me, climb up my rope, and crawl into my pocket to fall asleep. I was missing her terribly. The next day morning, when the narrator walked through his house after school, he was shocked to see how much damage was done due to fire. Everything that had not burnt in the fire was destroyed because of the water and chemicals they had used to put it out. And what was saved or rescued were some photographs, some documents, and some personal items which the mother had saved from fire. But the biggest loss for the narrator was his cat. She was gone. She was nowhere to be seen. The mother wanted the narrator to be out of the house so that they could find a place to live. They had no money even to buy clothes, so they had to borrow some money from his grandparents because there were no credit cards, no cash, or no identification with the help of which they could withdraw money from the bank. Everything was burnt. After the fire, the house had completely turned into a heap of waste material. And when they were clearing out those ashes or the waste of the house, burnt house, the narrator thought that he might find his cat somewhere, but he was nowhere to be seen. And the narrator thought that she was now dead. He remembered how he had rescued her as a kitten and how she behaved when she was very small. Whenever the narrator woke up in the morning, he would go up to her. That kitten would climb up on his dress and go inside the pocket and sleep. But now that she was gone, the narrator was terribly missing her. It always seems that bad news spreads quickly, and in my case, it was no different. Everyone in high school, including the teachers, was aware of my plight. Plight means sad state. I was embarrassed as if somehow I were responsible. What a way to start off at a new school. This was not the kind of attention I was looking for. The next day at school, people were acting even more strange than usual. I was getting ready for gym class at my locker. People were milling around me. Milling around means people moving around in a confused state, asking me to hurry up. I thought it strange, but in the light of the past few weeks, nothing would surprise me. It almost seemed that they were trying to shove me into the gym. Shove means push. Then I saw why. There was a big table set up with all kinds of stuff on it, just for me. They had taken up a collection and bought me school supplies, notebooks, all kinds of different clothes, jeans, tops, sweatsuits. It was like Christmas. I was overcome by emotion. Overcome by emotion means become emotional. People who had never spoken to me before were coming up to me to introduce themselves. I got all kinds of invitations to their houses. Their genuine outpouring of concern. Outpouring means expression of emotion, really touched me. In that instant, I finally breathed a sigh of relief and thought for the first time that things were going to be okay. I made friends that day. Now, this sad news about narrator's house being burnt spread very quickly in the school. Everyone in that high school, the students as well as the teachers, knew about his sad state. But narrator was somehow very embarrassed and he felt as if people found him responsible for all that. He wanted attention in his new school, but that was not the kind of attention he wanted. The next day, when he went to school, everyone had surrounded him, and narrator seemed a little confused. All the students took the narrator into the gym where he saw that there was a big table, and on that table, they had everything right from the school supplies, notebooks, all kinds of different clothes, jeans, tops, sweatsuits, everything that he would ever require. Actually, all the students had taken up a collection and everybody had collected or donated something for the narrator as help. People who had never even spoken to him before that were coming up and introducing themselves. They all were inviting him to their houses and they were all showing their concern, which really made the narrator very emotional. He was touched by their emotions or by their kindness. After a long time, he breathed a sigh of relief, means he became really comfortable. He felt good because now he had made friends and now he was feeling okay. He had that hope in his heart that now life will come to normal. A month later, I was at my house watching them rebuild it. But this time it was different. I wasn't alone. I was with two of my new friends from school. It took a fire for me to stop focusing on my feelings of insecurity and open up to all the wonderful people around me. Now, I was sitting there watching my house being rebuilt when I realized my life was doing the same thing. While we sat there on the curb is a footpath, planning my new bedroom, I heard someone walk up to me from behind and say, "Does this belong to you?" When I turned around to see who it was, I couldn't believe my eyes. A woman was standing there holding my cat. I leapt up and grabbed her out of the woman's arms. I held her close to me and cried into that beautiful orange fur. She purred happily. My friends were hugging me, hugging the cat, and jumping around. A month after that, narrator had gone to the same place where his house was there, and now they were rebuilding this house. But this time it was little different for him. The last time when he had visited his house, he was alone, but this time he had two more new friends. And now he had realized that that fire which had occurred at his house had changed his life as well as his attitude. He had started to focus on sad things of life. But now, when he had made friends, his life was getting back to normal, and as his home was getting rebuilt, he understood that one should stop focusing on the feelings of insecurity. One should stop focusing on what you have lost. But on the other hand, you should open up your mind to accept the changes, to accept what has gone and what new or something grand or big is coming in your life. And as he was sitting there watching his house rebuilt, he also felt that his life was also getting rebuilt. From depressing feelings, he was now moving on to positive feelings or positive attitude towards life. He was no more depressed, he was no more sad, he was now getting happier. And while he and his friends were sitting on that pavement and they were planning his new bedroom, he heard that someone had come to him and asked him whether that thing had belonged to him. When the narrator turned around, he found his cat. The narrator was so happy that he grabbed his cat and he hugged the cat and kissed her. He became very emotional, and so were his friends. They all were happy for him. Apparently, my cat had been so freaked by the fire, freaked means scared, that she ran over a mile away. Her collar had our phone number on it, but our phones had been destroyed and disconnected. This wonderful woman took her in and worked hard to find out whose cat it was. Somehow, she knew this cat was loved and sorely missed. As I sat there with my friends and my cat curled up in my lap, all the overwhelming feelings of loss and tragedy seemed to diminish. Diminish means go away. I felt gratitude for my life. Gratitude means thankfulness. My new friends, the kindness of a stranger, and the loud purr of my beloved cat. My cat was back, and so was I. Now, this paragraph explains what had happened to the narrator's cat. When there was a fire, the cat got scared and she ran over a mile away. She had a collar around her neck with their phone number on it, but all the phones had been destroyed and disconnected due to fire. Now, this wonderful woman had saved the cat. She took her into her house and took proper care of her. But at the same time, she also tried to find out the cat's owner. And somehow she knew that this cat was a very loved cat by the owner, and the owner must be missing her. Anyways, the woman went away. After that, when the narrator and his friends sat there with the cat curled up in the narrator's lap, the narrator had a lot of feelings in his mind. And at that point of time, he felt that when he had those sad, depressing feelings, feelings of loss and tragedy, all those negative feelings were now started to diminish, that is, go away. And instead of those negative feelings, he now had a lot of thankfulness for his new life, for his new friends, and the kindness which the stranger had shown by giving back the narrator's cat. And this last line, which says, "My cat was back, and so was I," this has a very deep meaning. Just as the cat got her owner back, she was back to the family where she belonged. In the same manner, the narrator had, for some time during those difficult times, he had lost his way. He had become very negative and depressed about his tragic life. But now, when everything was coming back to normal, when he had got new friends, he was adjusted in his new school, his house was being rebuilt, and his cat was also back. All good things were happening to him. The narrator had also got his normal life, his previous life back. This title, "A House is Not a Home," does mean that a house is a structure where people stay. It's a structure made of cement, wood, bricks, etc. But a house or that structure where people stay becomes home only when the entire family lives together. It becomes a home only when there is happiness around all. That's where I finish my explanation. The title, "A House is Not a Home," is apt in relation to the story. In the story, the author's house gets completely destroyed in a fire. Due to this, he and his mother had to stay at his grandparents' home and later in a rented apartment. The places where the author lived after the fire incident cannot be called a home because these places were without the belongings and things which the author loved. A home is the place where one gets comfort, coziness, and the joy of belongings. One can find the true happiness and comfort only in a home. But on the other hand, a house is without these sentiments and emotions. House is just a closed place made up of four walls. It can never be a match to a home. And as one has a sense of belonging to his home, it cannot be fulfilled by a place where one takes temporary shelter. And hence, the title of the story, A House is Not a Home, is justified. The story highlights the importance of keeping an open mind and not being depressed by the problems and challenges that are an important part of life. It is important for us to grow. It reiterates that every dark cloud has a silver lining. The story shows the problems which the teenager faces when an older and comfortable way of living suddenly ends, forcing one to rebuild life from scratch. But we can overcome any difficult situation and turn it to our advantage only if we stop crying over it and start facing the reality bravely with a positive attitude, just as the narrator of the story did. That's where I'll wrap up my today's session, and I will show you the summary and question answers related to this chapter just in a moment. But be sure that you take care of yourself. God bless you all, and lots of blessings from my side. Thank you, and I'll see you again in my next video. Take care.